The Nevada desert stretched endlessly under a blazing sun, its silence broken only by the distant roar of F-22 Raptors conducting training maneuvers above Nellis Air Force Base. In a maintenance hangar below, a young airman worked with mechanical precision, unaware that her world was about to change forever. Hidden within her father's forgotten belongings lay secrets that would transform her from a quiet mechanic into the guardian of an impossible legacy. What happens when a daughter discovers her father's hidden past? When 3 months of secret training must prepare her for a shot that defies every law of physics and probability? When 42 innocent lives hang in the balance, and the only thing standing between them and death is a rebuilt rifle, a father's journal, and the courage to attempt the impossible? This is the story of the longest shot in military history, a tale of precision born from love, courage forged in grief, and the unbreakable bond between a father's sacrifice and a daughter's destiny. It's about the moment when mechanical expertise meets warrior spirit, when impossible becomes inevitable, and when a single bullet carries the weight of honor, duty, and the enduring power of family legacy. In the next few minutes, you'll witness how one young woman's discovery of her father's hidden training materials leads to a confrontation that will test every limit of human capability. You'll see how precision, whether in maintaining aircraft or engaging targets at impossible distances, becomes the highest form of service to others. Welcome to this incredible journey. Before we begin, share with us where you're watching from. We love connecting with our community around the world. And tell us, what draws you most to stories of military courage and aviation excellence? Is it the technical precision, the human drama, or the way ordinary people rise to extraordinary challenges? Get ready for a story that will take you from the quiet corners of a maintenance hangar to the heart-stopping tension of the longest shot ever attempted, where mathematics meets courage, where legacy meets destiny, and where a father's love reaches across time to guide his daughter's hand in the moment when precision matters most. The countdown begins now. The Nevada desert wind howled across Nellis Air Force Base at 0300 hours, carrying with it the scent of jet fuel and the weight of 8 years of grief. Inside Hangar 7, the only sounds were the methodical clicks of Jessica Thompson's wrench against titanium bolts and the distant hum of generators keeping the base alive through another sleepless night. Jess wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her sleeve, leaving a small streak of hydraulic fluid across her skin. At 24, she had already earned a reputation as one of the finest aircraft mechanics on base, her small hands capable of miracles with the complex systems that kept America's most advanced fighters airborne. The F-22 Raptor before her gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, its stealth coating reflecting her focused expression. "Another all-nighter, Thompson?" she whispered to herself, a habit she had developed during the long, solitary hours. The hangar felt different at night, larger somehow, filled with shadows that seemed to hold memories of all the aircraft that had passed through these doors, all the pilots who had trusted their lives to the work done here. She had been 8 years old when her father first brought her to an airshow, her small hand dwarfed by his calloused palm as he pointed out the different aircraft. Staff Sergeant Michael Thompson had been a Marine sniper then, home on leave, his dress blues crisp and his chest adorned with ribbons that told stories he never shared. But his eyes had lit up when he talked about precision, about the marriage of human skill and mechanical perfection. "Every bolt matters, Jessie," he had told her, using the nickname that no one else was allowed to speak. "Every measurement, every calculation. Lives depend on getting it exactly right." 8 years ago, his own life had depended on someone else getting it right. The improvised explosive device that claimed him in Helmand Province had been precisely placed, precisely timed. The irony was not lost on her. Jess tightened the final bolt on the Raptor's engine cowling and stepped back, surveying her work. Perfect. Always perfect. It was the only way she knew how to honor his memory, through the meticulous attention to detail he had instilled in her, through the pursuit of mechanical excellence that had become her religion. The hangar's side office had been her unofficial sanctuary for 3 years now. Master Sergeant Morrison trusted her with the night shifts, knowing that her insomnia was an asset when critical maintenance deadlines loomed. It was there, while updating maintenance logs at 0415, that she noticed the loose floorboard beneath the old filing cabinet. Curiosity overcoming protocol, Jess moved the cabinet with effort, her muscles protesting after 12 hours of physical labor. Beneath the board lay a metal box, military issue, with a combination lock that had been painted over multiple times. Her heart stopped when she saw the faded label. Sergeant M. Thompson, Personal Effects. Her hands trembled as she tried combinations. Her birthday, his birthday, the date he had shipped out for his final deployment. Nothing. Then, almost without thinking, she entered the date of their last conversation, when he had called from Afghanistan to wish her sweet 16. The lock clicked open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were 3 items that would change everything. Her father's sniper training manual, annotated in his careful handwriting, a leather-bound journal filled with range calculations, wind readings, and philosophical observations about the nature of precision, and a photograph of him at the rifle range, young and confident, with an inscription on the back. For Jessie, may you find your own way to touch the sky. Jess sank into the office chair, her father's journal open in her lap. His words seemed to speak directly to her across the years. Shooting isn't about the gun. It's about understanding physics, respecting the variables, and finding that moment of perfect stillness where intention meets reality. As dawn began to paint the eastern mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Airman First Class Jessica Thompson made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She would learn her father's craft. She would master the art of precision he had died practicing, and somehow in the marriage of mechanical expertise and marksmanship, she would find a way to honor both his memory and her own calling. The F-22 Raptor sat silent and ready behind her, a testament to American engineering and her own skill. But in her hands, her father's journal felt like a roadmap to something far more personal, a legacy written in windage calculations and the promise of impossible shots. Outside, the base began to stir with the sounds of another day, but Jess remained motionless, reading her father's words and feeling for the first time in 8 years that she was exactly where she belonged. The sun had barely crested the mountains when Jess found herself standing at the edge of the base's abandoned rifle range, her father's journal clutched against her chest like a shield. The facility had been decommissioned 5 years earlier when the new automated range opened closer to the main complex, leaving behind concrete shooting positions and rusted target frames that stood like skeletal sentinels in the desert morning. She had spent the previous week studying every page of her father's notes, memorizing his observations about wind patterns, bullet drop calculations, and the mental discipline required for long-range precision. The technical aspects came naturally to her. After all, ballistics was just another form of engineering, and she had always excelled at understanding how mechanical systems worked together to achieve specific outcomes. The challenge would be translating theory into practice. Jess had requisitioned an old M24 rifle from the base armory's surplus inventory, claiming she needed it for a historical display project. The weapon had seen better days. Its stock was cracked, the scope mounts were loose, and the barrel showed signs of significant wear. But as she laid it across the concrete shooting bench, she saw potential where others might see scrap metal. "Every rifle has a personality," her father had written. "Learn to listen to what it's telling you." For 3 hours, she disassembled and cleaned every component, applying the same methodical approach she used on aircraft engines. She replaced worn springs with parts cannibalized from other surplus weapons, rebedded the action using techniques learned from maintaining precision instruments, and carefully adjusted the trigger mechanism until it broke cleanly at exactly 3 pounds of pressure. The scope was a different challenge entirely. The original optics were clouded, and the internal mechanisms had been damaged by years of neglect. But Jess had access to the base's electronics workshop, and she spent her lunch breaks over the next week rebuilding the scope's internals, calibrating the adjustment mechanisms with the precision of someone who understood that a single click could mean the difference between success and failure. It was during her 4th morning at the range that Master Sergeant Robert Morrison found her. "Thompson, what the hell are you doing out here?" Jess spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs. Tank Morrison stood 30 feet away, his massive frame silhouetted against the rising sun, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his campaign cover. At 45, he was a legend on the base, a veteran of 3 combat deployments who had earned his nickname by surviving a direct hit from an RPG in Iraq. His word was law in the maintenance hangar, and Jess had never seen him anywhere near the old rifle range. "Sergeant Morrison, I asked you a question, Airman." His voice carried the authority of 2 decades in uniform, but there was something else there too, curiosity, perhaps even concern. Jess straightened to attention, the rebuilt M24 still in her hands. "I was conducting personal training, Sergeant. On my own time using surplus equipment properly requisitioned through official channels." Tank walked closer, his eyes taking in the rifle, the scattered brass casings, and the notebook filled with her father's handwriting that lay open on the shooting bench. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost gentle. "That's Mike Thompson's journal." The words hit Jess like a physical blow. "You knew my father?" "Staff Sergeant Michael Thompson, Marine Corps Scout Sniper. Yeah, I knew him." Tank removed his cover and ran a hand through his graying hair. "We served together in Afghanistan, different units but same area of operations. He saved my squad's ass more than once with shots that shouldn't have been possible." Jess felt tears threatening and fought them back. "He never told me about his service, not the details." "Good men rarely do." Tank picked up the journal, handling it with the reverence due a sacred text. "Mike was the best natural shooter I ever saw. Had an instinct for reading conditions that couldn't be taught. But more than that, he understood that precision shooting was about more than just hitting targets. It was about taking responsibility for every round fired." "I want to learn," Jess said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I want to understand what he understood." Tank studied her for a long moment, his weathered face revealing nothing. Then he looked at the rebuilt rifle in her hands, noting the professional quality of her modifications, the careful attention to detail that marked her work in the hangar. "You rebuilt this yourself?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Show me what you can do." For the next hour, Tank watched as Jess worked through her father's shooting fundamentals, breathing control, natural point of aim, trigger manipulation. Her first shots were erratic, the unfamiliar recoil and report of the rifle throwing off her concentration, but gradually, as she applied the same methodical approach she used in aircraft maintenance, her groups began to tighten. "Your father would be proud," Tank said finally, as Jess placed 5 consecutive shots within a 6-inch circle at 300 yards. "But if you're serious about this, you need proper training, real training. Will you teach me?" Tank was quiet for so long that Jess thought he might refuse. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old promises and older grief. "I owe your father a debt I can never repay. Maybe teaching his daughter something he never got the chance to teach her himself is a start." He shouldered the rifle and checked the chamber. "But we do this right. No shortcuts, no compromises. You want to honor Mike Thompson's memory. You earn it the same way he did, through discipline, dedication, and respect for what this weapon can do." As they walked back toward the base together, Jess felt something she had not experienced since her father's death, the sense that she was not alone in carrying his legacy forward. Behind them, the desert wind erased their footprints from the sand, but the bond forged that morning between mentor and student would prove as enduring as the mountains themselves. 3 months of dawn training sessions had transformed both Jess and her relationship with the rebuilt M24. Under Tank's relentless tutelage, she had progressed from struggling to hit targets at 300 yards to consistently placing shots within the 10 ring at 800 meters. Her mechanical precision, combined with her father's instinctive understanding of ballistics that seemed to flow through her bloodline, had created something remarkable, a shooter capable of feats that defied conventional training timelines. But today, there would be no training. Today, Nellis Air Force Base was hosting its most prestigious event of the year, the annual Defense Technology Showcase, a celebration that brought together congressional defense committees, Pentagon officials, defense contractors, and the families of base personnel to witness demonstrations of America's most advanced military capabilities. Jess stood in Hangar 7 at 0530, performing final pre-flight inspections on the F-22 Raptors that would participate in the afternoon's aerial demonstration. The aircraft gleamed under the hangar lights, their stealth coating reflecting the red, white, and blue bunting that had been hung throughout the facility. Every bolt, every panel, every system had been checked and rechecked. There would be no mechanical failures on her watch, not with half of Washington watching. "Thompson, you've been over that bird 3 times already," Tank called from across the hangar, where he was supervising the positioning of static display aircraft. "Even you can't make perfection more perfect." Jess smiled despite her nervousness. "Just making sure, Sergeant. This isn't exactly a routine training flight. The base had been transformed overnight. Security checkpoints had tripled, with military, police, and Secret Service agents, conducting thorough screenings of every person entering the facility. The main parade ground had been converted into an outdoor amphitheater, with reviewing stands for VIPs and family seating areas decorated with patriotic displays. Food vendors had set up along the flight line, and a military band was conducting sound checks near the main stage. Captain Sarah Mitchell appeared in the hangar doorway, her usually immaculate uniform somehow even more crisp than usual. As the base's chief security officer, she had been working 18-hour days for the past week, coordinating with federal agencies and ensuring that every possible threat had been anticipated and countered. "Final security sweep in 30 minutes, she announced to the assembled maintenance crews. After that, this hangar becomes a restricted area until after the demonstration. Any last-minute issues need to be addressed now." Jess watched Captain Mitchell move through the hangar with the fluid efficiency of someone accustomed to command. There was something about the captain that reminded her of her father, the same quiet confidence, the same way of seeing potential threats before they materialized. It was Captain Mitchell who had noticed the inconsistencies in the background checks of some civilian contractors, leading to enhanced screening procedures. It was Captain Mitchell who had insisted on additional communication protocols and backup systems. "She's good at her job," Tank observed, following Jess's gaze. "Reminds me of your old man, actually. Always thinking 3 steps ahead." By noon, the base was alive with activity. Families streamed through the main gate, children clutching small American flags and pointing excitedly at the aircraft on display. Congressional delegations toured the facilities, receiving briefings on advanced avionics systems and stealth technology. Defense contractors demonstrated new weapon systems and communication equipment, their presentations polished and professional. Jess found herself assigned to escort duty, guiding groups of VIP visitors through the maintenance areas and explaining the complexity of keeping fifth-generation fighters operational. She spoke with passion about the precision required, the attention to detail, the way every component had to work in perfect harmony to achieve the impossible, sustained flight at speeds that defied human comprehension. "How long have you been working on these aircraft?" asked Congressman Bradley, a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee. 3 years, sir. But I've been around aviation my whole life. My father always said that flying was humanity's way of touching the divine." The congressman smiled. "Wise man, your father. Is he here today?" "No, sir. He was killed in Afghanistan 8 years ago. Marine Corps." The congressman's expression sobered immediately. "I'm sorry for your loss, Airman. Men like your father are the reason we can gather here today in freedom." As the afternoon demonstration began, Jess positioned herself in the hangar to monitor radio communications and provide technical support if needed. The F-22 Raptors performed flawlessly, their pilots executing maneuvers that showcased both American engineering excellence and the skill of the men and women who flew them. The crowd's cheers echoed across the desert as the aircraft painted contrails against the brilliant blue sky. But Captain Mitchell was not watching the air show. From her position in the Security Command Center, she was monitoring a different kind of performance. The subtle dance of personnel moving through restricted areas, the pattern of radio communications, the behavior of individuals who should have been focused on the celebration but seemed more interested in security protocols and facility layouts. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the way certain civilian contractors avoided eye contact, in the nervous energy of men who should have been relaxed and enjoying the festivities. Her instincts, honed by years of military service and combat experience, were screaming warnings that her rational mind was still trying to process. In Hangar 7, Jess noticed the first sign of trouble when her radio crackled with an encrypted transmission that cut through the normal chatter of the air demonstration. The voice was tense, professional, and carried an urgency that made her blood run cold. "Security alert condition yellow. All personnel maintain current positions and report any unusual activity immediately." Through the hangar's open doors, she could see families still enjoying the celebration, children still waving flags, congressmen still smiling for photographs. But underneath the festive atmosphere, she sensed a current of tension that had not been there moments before. Tank appeared at her side, his expression grim. "Something's happening. Captain Mitchell just ordered all maintenance personnel to secure their areas and stand by for further instructions." As if summoned by his words, the sound of distant sirens began to echo across the base, barely audible above the crowd noise, but unmistakable to anyone who had spent years in military service. The celebration continued, but for those who knew how to read the signs, the afternoon had just taken a very dangerous turn. Jess felt her father's journal in her cargo pocket, its familiar weight a reminder of lessons learned and skills developed in secret. She had no way of knowing that within the next few hours, those skills would be put to a test that would determine not just her own fate, but the lives of everyone she had sworn to protect. The first explosion shattered the afternoon calm at 14:37 hours, sending a column of black smoke rising from the communications building on the far side of the base. The crowd's cheers turned to confused murmurs as the F-22 Raptors, still airborne from their demonstration, received emergency vectors to land immediately at a secure airfield 50 miles away. Captain Mitchell's voice cut through the radio static with military precision. Security alert condition read, "This is not a drill. All civilian personnel proceed immediately to designated safe areas. All military personnel assume defensive positions." In Hangar 7, Jess felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with emergency situations, but this was different from the controlled chaos of a mechanical failure or weather emergency. This felt personal, targeted, wrong in a way that made her skin crawl. "Thompson, Morrison, secure this hangar and prepare for lockdown." Captain Mitchell's voice crackled through their radios. "Unknown hostiles have breached the perimeter. Multiple casualties reported." Tank was already moving, his 20 years of combat experience taking over as he sealed the hangar's secondary entrances and activated the facility's emergency protocols. "Jess, kill the main lights and get to the armory. If someone's coming for these birds, they're going to have to go through us first." The second explosion was closer, close enough to rattle the hangar's steel framework and send tools cascading from workbenches. Through the main doors, Jess could see families running across the tarmac, military police shouting directions and the organized chaos of a base under attack. But it was the third explosion that changed everything. The main administration building, where the VIP reception was being held, erupted in flames and debris. Through her binoculars, Jess could see figures in military fatigues moving with tactical precision through the smoke, herding survivors toward the building's main conference room. "They're taking hostages," she whispered into her radio. Captain Mitchell's response was immediate and grim. "Confirmed. Unknown number of hostiles have seized the administration building. Congressional delegation, base command staff, and approximately 40 civilian family members are trapped inside." The reality of the situation hit Jess like a physical blow. Among those hostages were people she had spoken with just hours earlier. Congressman Bradley, who had asked about her father, Colonel Harrison, who had approved her transfer to Nellis, families with children who had been waving flags and cheering for the air demonstration. Viktor Petrov emerged from the smoke-filled administration building at 1500 hours, his tall frame moving with the fluid confidence of a man accustomed to violence. He wore the digital camouflage of a dozen different armies, his face marked by a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from his days as a Spetsnaz operative before ideology and money had turned him into something far more dangerous. His voice, when it came through hijacked base communications, carried a slight accent and the cold certainty of someone who had planned this moment for months. "I am Viktor Petrov. Your base is now under my control. In the administration building, I hold 43 American lives, your congressmen, your officers, your families. Any attempt to approach this building will result in immediate executions." Tank cursed under his breath as he monitored multiple radio frequencies, trying to piece together the scope of the attack. They hit communications first, then power, then command and control. This isn't random terrorism. This is military-grade planning. Petrov's demands were as precise as his tactics: the release of 12 specific prisoners from federal custody, $50 million in untraceable cryptocurrency, and guaranteed safe passage to a non-extradition country. But Jess could hear something else in his voice, the satisfaction of someone who had struck at the heart of American military power and found it vulnerable. "You have 6 hours, Petrov continued. "For every hour that passes without compliance, I will execute one hostage, beginning with your base commander, Colonel James Harrison." Through the hangar's windows, Jess could see the tactical situation developing with horrifying clarity. The administration building sat on elevated ground, with clear fields of fire in all directions. Petrov's men had positioned themselves with military precision, creating overlapping zones of coverage that would make any direct assault a suicide mission. The building's architecture, designed for openness and transparency, had become a fortress that protected the attackers while exposing any potential rescuers. Captain Mitchell's voice came through their encrypted channel, tight with controlled fury. Base security forces are pinned down. The hostiles have military-grade equipment and training. Federal response teams are en route, but they won't arrive for at least 2 hours. What about air support? Tank asked. Negative. Too close to civilian population, and the hostiles have surface-to-air capabilities. Any aircraft approaching the building will be shot down, and the hostages will be executed in retaliation. Jess studied the tactical display on her tablet, measuring distances and angles with the same precision she applied to aircraft maintenance. The administration building was 2,940 meters from their position in Hangar 7, an impossible shot by any conventional standard, but her father's journal had taught her that impossible was simply another word for untested. There might be another way, she said quietly. Tank looked at her sharply. What are you thinking? Long-range precision shot. Take out the leader, create confusion, give the assault teams an opening. Captain Mitchell's voice cut through their discussion. Negative, Thompson. The range is nearly 3,000 meters, and you'd have one shot before they start executing hostages. It's too risky. But even as she spoke, Jess could see Captain Mitchell running calculations in her head, weighing impossible odds against unacceptable alternatives. In the distance, smoke continued to rise from the administration building, and somewhere in that smoke were people whose only hope might be a young mechanic with her father's rifle and 3 months of secret training. The radio crackled with Petrov's voice again. Your time is running short, Americans. In 1 hour your colonel dies, then your congressman, then the children. Choose wisely. Jess felt her father's journal against her ribs, its weight a reminder of lessons learned and promises made. She had spent 3 months learning to touch targets at impossible distances. Now she would discover if precision could overcome the impossible odds that separated the living from the dead. The tactical situation deteriorated rapidly as Petrov's deadline approached. Through encrypted communications, Captain Mitchell coordinated with federal response teams, but every option led to the same grim conclusion. Any direct assault would result in mass casualties among the hostages. SWAT teams are in position, but they can't get closer than 800 meters without being detected, Captain Mitchell reported from her mobile command post. The terrorists have night vision, thermal imaging, and overlapping fields of fire. It's a perfect defensive position. Jess monitored the communications while studying satellite imagery of the administration building on her tablet. Petrov had chosen his fortress well. The structure sat atop a small rise with no cover for approaching forces, its large windows providing clear sightlines in all directions. The building's modern design, meant to symbolize transparency and openness, had become a death trap for everyone inside. Tank paced the hangar like a caged animal, his frustration evident in every movement. 43 people, including kids, and we're sitting here with our thumbs up our asses while some foreign psychopath plays games with American lives. It's not games, Jess said quietly, still studying the tactical display. Look at the positioning, the timing, the equipment. This was planned for months, maybe years. Petrov knows exactly what he's doing. At 1600 hours, Petrov's voice crackled through the hijacked communications again. Your hour is up, Americans. As promised, your colonel will now pay the price for your government's stubbornness. The single gunshot that echoed across the base hit everyone like a physical blow. Captain Mitchell's voice was tight with controlled rage as she confirmed what they all feared. Colonel Harrison has been executed. Repeat, the base commander is dead. Jess felt something cold and hard settle in her chest, the same feeling she had experienced 8 years ago when the chaplain arrived at their door with news of her father's death. But this time, she was not a helpless 16-year-old girl. This time, she had skills, training, and a weapon that could reach across impossible distances. The next execution will be in 1 hour, Petrov announced. Congressman Bradley will die unless my demands are met. After him, the children. I suggest you reconsider your position. Captain Mitchell appeared in the hangar doorway, her uniform torn and her face streaked with smoke from coordinating rescue efforts. Federal teams are requesting more time to position assets, but Petrov isn't negotiating. He's going to kill them all regardless of whether his demands are met. How can you be sure? Tank asked. Because I've seen his file. Viktor Petrov, former Spetsnaz, dishonorably discharged for war crimes in Chechnya. He's wanted by Interpol for terrorist attacks in 6 countries. This isn't about money or prisoner releases. This is about humiliating the United States military on live television. Jess looked up from her calculations. What do you mean, live television? He's broadcasting everything. The executions, the demands, our inability to respond. It's being streamed on every major news network and social media platform. The whole world is watching America's most advanced airbase held hostage by a dozen terrorists. The weight of that revelation settled over them like a shroud. This wasn't just about the lives of 43 hostages. This was about American credibility, about the perception of strength that kept enemies at bay and allies confident. Petrov had struck at something far more valuable than any military target. He had struck at the myth of American invincibility. There has to be something we can do, Jess said, her voice barely above a whisper. Captain Mitchell studied her for a long moment, and Jess could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Tank told me about your training. 3 months with that rebuilt M24, working your way out to long-range shots. Yes, ma'am, but the longest confirmed hit I've made is 1,200 meters. The administration building is at 2,940 meters from this position. That's nearly double your longest shot, in combat conditions with lives hanging in the balance. Captain Mitchell's voice was clinical, professional, but Jess could hear the desperation underneath. Even if you could make the shot, you'd have to hit Petrov specifically. Take out anyone else and he starts executing hostages immediately. Tank pulled up the building schematics on his tablet. The main conference room has floor-to-ceiling windows facing this direction. If Petrov positions himself near those windows, it's still an impossible shot, Captain Mitchell interrupted. The wind conditions alone would throw off any calculation, and that's assuming perfect visibility and no atmospheric distortion. Jess felt her father's journal against her ribs and remembered his words. Shooting isn't about the gun, it's about understanding physics, respecting the variables, and finding that moment of perfect stillness where intention meets reality. My father made impossible shots, she said quietly. Tank can confirm that. He saved lives by hitting targets that shouldn't have been possible to hit. Your father was a trained Marine sniper with years of combat experience, Captain Mitchell replied. You're a mechanic with 3 months of range time. I'm also my father's daughter, Jess said, meeting the captain's eyes directly, and I'm the only option you have left. The silence that followed was broken by another transmission from Petrov. 30 minutes remain before Congressman Bradley joins your colonel in death. I hope you are enjoying the show, America. Your mighty military, helpless before a handful of determined men. Captain Mitchell closed her eyes for a moment, weighing impossible choices against unacceptable alternatives. When she opened them again, her expression had hardened into the mask of someone who had made peace with sending people into harm's way. If we do this, you get 1 shot. Miss, and Petrov starts executing hostages immediately. Hit anyone other than Petrov, and the result is the same. Are you absolutely certain you can make this shot? Jess thought of her father's words, of Tank's training, of the countless hours spent learning to read wind and calculate drop. She thought of Colonel Harrison, who had approved her transfer to Nellis. She thought of Congressman Bradley, who had asked about her father with genuine respect. She thought of the children whose only crime was attending a celebration of American military excellence. I can make the shot, she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was promising. But I'll need that M24, and I'll need to get to an elevated position with a clear line of sight. Tank was already moving toward the armory. The old control tower. It's been abandoned for years, but it's got the height and the angle we need. As they prepared for what might be the longest shot in military history, Jess felt the weight of her father's legacy settling on her shoulders. Somewhere in the distance, a clock was counting down toward another execution, and the only thing standing between life and death was a young woman with her father's rifle and the impossible promise of precision across nearly 3,000 meters of Nevada desert. The abandoned control tower stood like a concrete sentinel against the darkening sky, its windows long since shattered by years of desert winds and neglect. Jess climbed the rusted stairs 2 at a time, the rebuilt M24 slung across her back, and her father's journal clutched in her free hand. Behind her, Tank carried ammunition, spotting equipment, and the weight of knowing that everything depended on the next 30 minutes. Tower's structurally sound, Tank reported through his radio as they reached the observation level. Good sight lines to the target building, minimal wind interference at this elevation. Captain Mitchell's voice crackled back immediately. Federal teams are in position to exploit any opportunity you create. But remember, you miss and people die. You hit the wrong target and people die. This has to be perfect. Jess set up her shooting position near the tower's eastern window, the M24's bipod legs finding purchase on the concrete sill. Through her scope, the administration building looked impossibly distant, wavering slightly in the heat shimmer that rose from the desert floor. At this range, she wasn't just fighting physics. She was fighting the very atmosphere itself. Range to target, 2,940 meters, Tank called out, his voice steady despite the circumstances. Wind from the southwest at 8 knots, gusting to 12. Temperature 78 degrees, humidity 15%. Jess made rapid calculations in her head, cross-referencing her father's ballistic tables with the environmental conditions. At this distance, the bullet would drop nearly 30 feet and drift several feet to the right if she didn't compensate correctly. The margin for error was measured in inches, and a single miscalculation would mean death for innocent people. "I need eyes on the target," she said, adjusting her scope's elevation turret with mechanical precision. "Where exactly is Petrov positioned?" Captain Mitchell's voice came through the radio, tight with tension. "Surveillance teams report he's moving between the conference room and the main office. He's using the hostages as human shields, staying close to the windows but never remaining in one position for more than a few seconds." Through her scope, Jess could see movement in the building's windows, shadows that might be people, flashes of light that could be weapons or equipment. But at nearly 3,000 meters, even with maximum magnification, individual identification was impossible. "I need him to stay still," she said. "Just for 10 seconds. That's all I need." Tank checked his watch. 15 minutes until the next execution. Petrov's going to make his move soon. As if summoned by his words, Petrov's voice echoed across the base through the hijacked communication system. 10 minutes remain, Americans. Congressman Bradley is prepared to join your colonel in martyrdom. Perhaps his death will finally convince your government to take my demands seriously. Jess felt sweat beading on her forehead, despite the desert evening's cooling temperature. Her father's journal lay open beside her, its pages filled with wisdom earned through years of precision shooting. The shot begins in the mind, long before the trigger is pulled. Visualize the bullet's path, understand every variable, and trust in the mathematics of ballistics. Movement in the target building, Captain Mitchell reported. Petrov is positioning himself near the main conference room windows. This might be your opportunity. Through her scope, Jess could see a figure moving purposefully across the conference room. Tall, confident, wearing the digital camouflage that matched intelligence reports of Petrov's preferred tactical gear. He was using Congressman Bradley as a human shield, the politician's terrified face visible even at this impossible distance. "I have a possible target," Jess whispered into her radio. "But the angle is wrong. He's too close to the hostage." Tank studied the scene through his spotting scope, his experienced eye reading the tactical situation with grim efficiency. "He's going to move to the window for the execution. That's when he'll be most exposed." "That's also when he'll be most dangerous," Captain Mitchell replied. "If you miss that shot, Bradley dies immediately." Jess closed her eyes and felt her father's presence in the journal beside her, in the rifle beneath her hands, in the knowledge that had been passed down through 3 generations of military service. When she opened them again, her vision was crystal clear, her breathing steady, her mind focused on the single point where intention would meet reality. "I'm ready," she said. Petrov appeared at the conference room window at exactly 17:45 hours, dragging Congressman Bradley into position for the cameras that would broadcast his execution to the world. For a moment, perhaps 5 seconds, he stood silhouetted against the window, his rifle raised, his attention focused on the terrified politician kneeling before him. "Target acquired," Jess whispered, her crosshairs settling on Petrov's center mass. "Wind steady at 9 knots. Range confirmed at 2,940 meters." Her finger found the trigger, applying the steady rearward pressure that her father's notes had described as the marriage of will and physics. The M24 had been rebuilt with love, precision, and the accumulated knowledge of 3 months' training. Now it would be tested against the most demanding shot of her life. "Send it," Tank whispered. Jess took a breath, let half of it out, and found that moment of perfect stillness where the rifle became an extension of her will. The trigger broke cleanly at exactly 3 pounds of pressure, and the .308 Winchester round began its 3-second journey across the Nevada desert, carrying with it the hopes of 42 hostages and the legacy of a father who had taught his daughter that precision was the highest form of love. Through her scope, Jess watched the bullet's impact with the detached clarity of someone who had just touched the divine. Viktor Petrov dropped instantly, his rifle clattering to the floor as federal assault teams stormed the building from 3 directions simultaneously. The longest shot in the history of Nellis Air Force Base had found its mark, and 42 American lives had been saved by a young woman who had learned to honor her father's memory through the marriage of mechanical precision and impossible courage. Time seemed to crystallize as Jess settled into her final shooting position, the rebuilt M24 becoming an extension of her body and will. Through the scope, she could see Petrov's figure moving with predatory confidence across the conference room, using Congressman Bradley as a human shield while positioning himself for the execution that would be broadcast to the world. "Wind holding steady at 9 knots from the southwest," Tank reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "Atmospheric conditions stable. You have a narrow window before he moves again." Jess made her final adjustments, compensating for the bullet's 30-foot drop over nearly 3,000 meters and the lateral drift caused by the crosswind. Her father's ballistic calculations, memorized through months of study, flowed through her mind like a prayer. Muzzle velocity 2,600 feet per second, time of flight 3.1 seconds, wind drift compensation 4.7 minutes of angle. "Federal teams are in position," Captain Mitchell's voice crackled through the radio. "The moment you take the shot, they'll breach from 3 directions. But remember, you only get one chance." Through her scope, Jess watched Petrov drag Congressman Bradley to the window. The terrorist's scarred face twisted with satisfaction as he prepared to demonstrate American helplessness to the watching world. The politician's terrified eyes were visible even at this impossible distance, and Jess could see him mouthing what might have been prayers or final words to his family. "Target is exposed," Tank reported. "Clean shot available for approximately 10 seconds. Jess felt her heartbeat slow as she entered the zone her father had described in his journal, that place of perfect calm, where external chaos faded away and only the mathematics of ballistics remained. The crosshairs settled on Petrov's center mass, just below his left shoulder blade, where the bullet would find vital organs and drop him instantly. "I have the shot," she whispered. In the conference room, Petrov raised his rifle toward Congressman Bradley's head, his finger moving toward the trigger that would end an innocent life and broadcast American vulnerability to the world. This was the moment, the narrow window between intention and execution, where precision could triumph over terror. Jess took a deep breath, released half of it, and found that perfect stillness her father had written about. The M24's trigger broke cleanly at exactly 3 pounds of pressure, and the .308 Winchester round began its journey across the Nevada desert, carrying with it 3 months of training, 8 years of grief, and the accumulated wisdom of 3 generations of military service. For 3.1 seconds, the bullet flew through the desert air, its trajectory calculated with mechanical precision, but guided by something deeper: the love of a daughter for her father's memory, the dedication of a soldier to her oath, and the unwavering belief that impossible shots were simply untested possibilities. Through her scope, Jess watched the impact with crystalline clarity. The bullet struck Petrov exactly where she had aimed, just below his left shoulder blade, the kinetic energy transferring instantly and dropping him to the conference room floor. His rifle clattered away harmlessly as federal assault teams breached the building from 3 directions simultaneously. "Target down!" Tank shouted into his radio. "Repeat, target is down." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Flashbang grenades detonated throughout the administration building as SWAT teams poured through windows and doorways, their movements coordinated with military precision. Petrov's remaining men, caught off guard by their leader's sudden death, found themselves facing overwhelming force from multiple directions. "All hostiles neutralized," Captain Mitchell reported 60 seconds later. "Hostages are secure. Medical teams are responding to treat the wounded." Jess remained motionless behind her rifle, the scope still trained on the conference room where Congressman Bradley was being helped to his feet by federal agents. The magnitude of what she had accomplished was beginning to sink in, a shot that military snipers would study for decades, achieved by a 24-year-old mechanic with 3 months of training and her father's rebuilt rifle. 2,940 meters, Tank said quietly. his voice filled with awe. In combat conditions, under pressure, with lives hanging in the balance, your father would be proud, Jess. Hell, he'd be amazed. Through her scope, Jess could see the hostages being evacuated from the building, families reunited, children crying with relief, congressmen and military officers who would live to serve another day because a young woman had learned to touch targets at impossible distances. "How do you feel?" Tank asked. Jess lowered the rifle and looked at her hands, surprised to find them steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Empty," she said finally. "I took a life today. That's not something to celebrate." "You saved 42 lives." Captain Mitchell's voice came through the radio as she climbed the tower stairs to join them. Viktor Petrov was a terrorist who had killed hundreds of innocent people across 6 countries. The world is a safer place because of what you did here today. As the sun set over the Nevada desert, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Jess felt her father's presence in the cooling air. She had honored his memory not through vengeance or anger, but through the precise application of skills learned in love and dedication. The longest shot in the history of Nellis Air Force Base had been fired not by a trained sniper, but by a mechanic who had learned that precision was the highest form of service. In the distance, ambulances carried the wounded to safety while investigators began the long process of understanding how a handful of terrorists had penetrated America's most secure facilities. But in the abandoned control tower, 3 soldiers sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the desert sky and knowing that sometimes impossible shots were exactly what the situation demanded. The rebuilt M24 lay across Jess's lap, its mission complete, its legacy secured. Tomorrow there would be investigations and interviews, commendations and career changes, but tonight there was only the satisfaction of duty performed and lives saved through the marriage of mechanical precision and impossible courage. The administration building buzzed with controlled chaos as federal agents processed the crime scene and medical teams treated the rescued hostages. Jess sat in an ambulance, a shock blanket draped over her shoulders, watching paramedics check Congressman Bradley for injuries. The politician's hands trembled, but his eyes were clear and grateful when they met hers. "The shot came from where?" FBI Special Agent Rodriguez asked Captain Mitchell, his voice filled with skepticism. "The old control tower. Range of 2,940 meters. Single shot. Immediate incapacitation." Captain Mitchell's report was clinical, but pride colored her professional tone. Agent Rodriguez shook his head. "That's nearly 2 miles. A mechanic with no formal sniper training made a shot that would challenge the world's best marksman?" "Airman Thompson saved 42 American lives," Captain Mitchell replied firmly. "The ballistics evidence will confirm everything." Tank approached where Jess sat, his weathered face showing pride and concern. "How are you holding up?" "I killed someone today," Jess said quietly. "I know he was a terrorist, but I still took a human life." "That's what makes you different from him," Tank replied. "Petrov killed for ideology and power. You killed to protect the innocent. Your father would understand the difference." Brigadier General Patricia Wells arrived by helicopter at 2100 hours, her no-nonsense demeanor commanding immediate respect. She had flown from Peterson Air Force Base to debrief the situation and assess security failures. "Airman Thompson," General Wells said, approaching with measured steps. "What you accomplished today defies conventional understanding of marksmanship capabilities." Jess stood at attention, still wearing maintenance coveralls. "I did what the situation required, ma'am." "At ease. Tell me about your training. How does an aircraft mechanic develop skills to make shots most trained snipers would consider impossible?" For 30 minutes, Jess explained discovering her father's materials, secret training with Tank, and her methodical approach to developing precision skills. General Wells listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes. "Your father was Staff Sergeant Michael Thompson, Marine Corps Scout Sniper, killed in Helmand Province 8 years ago," General Wells said, consulting files. "Posthumously awarded the Silver Star. His service record indicates exceptional marksmanship and innovative tactical thinking." "Yes, ma'am. I never knew the details until I found his training materials. Genetics can account for natural ability, but today required discipline, dedication, and mental fortitude that can't be taught." Investigators revealed Petrov's operation had spent months infiltrating through compromised contractor credentials, mapping security protocols, and positioning equipment. Their plan was methodical, designed to maximize casualties and humiliate American military capabilities. They never anticipated resistance from an unexpected source, Agent Rodriguez admitted. Their intelligence was comprehensive, but they didn't account for a mechanic with sniper capabilities. Congressman Bradley approached as Jess prepared to leave medical. M24, when that man put his rifle to my head, I thought about my wife, my children, everything I'd never say to them. I'm glad you're safe, sir. Safe because of you. Your father would be proud of the woman you've become. At midnight, General Wells called Jess into a briefing room where Tank and Captain Mitchell waited. Your actions created a unique situation. You've demonstrated capabilities exceeding many trained snipers, but outside official channels. General Wells paused carefully. However, 42 lives saved, terrorist threat neutralized, American credibility preserved. What happens now, ma'am? We discuss your future. You've proven valuable as a mechanic, but today suggests a greater calling. How would you feel about formal sniper training, transitioning from maintaining aircraft to protecting lives through precision marksmanship? Jess felt her father's journal, remembering the satisfaction of keeping Raptors airborne, and the moment her crosshairs settled on Petrov. She thought of her father's words, "Lives depend on getting it exactly right." I'd be honored to serve in whatever capacity best serves my country, ma'am, but I'd like to continue mechanical duties as well. Both skills complement each other. General Wells smiled. I think we can arrange something honoring both talents. Welcome to a very exclusive club. Walking back with Tank and Captain Mitchell under desert stars, Jess carried the satisfaction of duty performed, and lives saved through mechanical precision and impossible courage. 6 weeks after the siege, Jess stood in the briefing room of the United States Air Force Special Operations Command, wearing dress blues that still felt foreign compared to her familiar maintenance coveralls. The silver star on her chest caught the morning light streaming through the windows, its weight both lighter and heavier than she had expected. General Wells sat across from her, flanked by Colonel Sarah Chen, the commanding officer of the Air Force's newly established Precision Engagement Program, and Master Sergeant David Kumar, a legendary sniper instructor whose reputation preceded him across all branches of military service. M24, General Wells began, your performance during the Nellis incident has created ripple effects throughout the Department of Defense. Your shot has been analyzed by ballistics experts, studied by military academies, and cited in congressional testimony about the importance of unconventional thinking in modern warfare. Colonel Chen leaned forward, her expression serious but encouraging. What you accomplished shouldn't have been possible with your level of formal training, but the results speak for themselves. We've spent the past month developing a program that can harness natural talent like yours while providing the institutional support necessary for success. The dual-track specialist program, Master Sergeant Kumar explained, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had trained hundreds of military marksmen. You'll maintain your aircraft maintenance responsibilities while receiving advanced sniper training. We believe your mechanical background actually enhances your shooting abilities. The same precision mindset that keeps jets airborne translates directly to long-range marksmanship. Jess felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. What would this training involve? 6 months at the Special Operations Training Center in Florida, Colonel Chen replied. Advanced ballistics, environmental reading, tactical planning, and psychological preparation. You'll learn to make shots like the one at Nellis consistently, under various conditions with different weapon systems. But here's what makes this unique, General Wells added. You'll also spend time with our most advanced aircraft maintenance programs. We're developing new precision-guided systems that require both mechanical expertise and marksmanship understanding. You'd be pioneering the integration of these skill sets. Master Sergeant Kumar opened a folder containing detailed training schedules and curriculum outlines. Your father's journal has been studied by our instructors. His techniques were ahead of their time, combining traditional marksmanship with engineering principles that we're only now beginning to formally recognize. Staff Sergeant Thompson was essentially creating a new methodology, Colonel Chen continued, mathematical precision applied to human performance. You've inherited not just his natural ability, but his innovative approach to problem-solving under pressure. Jess thought about Tank, who had been promoted to Senior Master Sergeant and assigned as her official mentor throughout the transition. He had spent weeks helping her process the emotional aftermath of taking a life, ensuring she understood the weight of responsibility that came with her newfound abilities. What about the people I work with now? My team in the maintenance hangar. They'll remain part of your support network, General Wells assured her. Tank will continue as your mentor, and you'll rotate between maintenance duties and specialized training. We're not taking you away from what you love, we're expanding your ability to serve. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Captain Mitchell entered, now wearing the oak leaves of a major, her promotion having come through in recognition of her leadership during the crisis. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought Jess should see this, Major Mitchell said, handing over a tablet displaying a news article. The story just broke. The headline read, "The Longest Shot, How a Young Mechanic Saved 42 Lives." The article detailed the siege, the impossible shot, and the broader implications for military training and preparedness. Jess's photograph appeared alongside quotes from Congressman Bradley, who had become an advocate for recognizing unconventional talent within the military. "The world knows what you did," General Wells said gently. "That brings both opportunities and responsibilities. You'll be representing something larger than yourself, the idea that heroism can emerge from unexpected places." Jess closed the tablet and looked around the room at the faces of people who had believed in her potential before she had recognized it herself. She thought about her father's words, written in a journal that had traveled from Afghanistan to Nevada to this moment. Every measurement matters, every calculation, every shot. Lives depend on getting it exactly right. "I accept the assignment," she said, her voice steady with newfound confidence. "But I want to honor my father's memory by doing this the right way. No shortcuts, no compromises. If I'm going to carry his legacy forward, I want to earn it through the same dedication he showed." Master Sergeant Kumar smiled, the expression transforming his usually stern features. "That's exactly what we hoped you'd say. Your training begins Monday. Welcome to the future of precision warfare, Airman Thompson." As the meeting concluded and the officers filed out, Jess remained seated for a moment, feeling the weight of her father's journal in her pocket. Through the window, she could see F-22 Raptors conducting training flights, their contrails painting geometric patterns against the blue sky. She was no longer just a mechanic who had made an impossible shot. She was becoming something new, a bridge between the mechanical precision that kept aircraft flying and the human precision that protected lives at impossible distances. Her father's legacy lived on, not in grief or memory, but in the marriage of engineering excellence and warrior spirit that would define her service for years to come. The longest shot had been just the beginning. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Arlington National Cemetery as Jess knelt beside her father's headstone, her dress blue uniform crisp despite the humid Washington air. The oak leaves on her collar caught the light. Major Jessica Thompson, now commanding officer of the Air Force's Precision Engagement Division, a program that had grown from experimental concept to essential military capability. 7 years, Dad," she whispered, placing fresh flowers beside the marble marker. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like a lifetime." Behind her, Tank approached with measured steps, his own uniform bearing the stripes of a chief master sergeant. At 58, he had become the senior enlisted advisor for the entire Special Operations Training Command, his expertise in developing unconventional talent now sought throughout the military. "The ceremony starts in an hour," he said gently, settling beside her on the grass. "So you ready for this?" Jess smiled, thinking about the dedication ceremony for the Staff Sergeant Michael Thompson Precision Training Center, a facility that would train the next generation of dual-track specialists. "I think he would have liked the idea of his name on a building where people learn to protect others. He would have been proud of what you've become," Tank replied, "though I suspect he always knew you had it in you." The years since Nellis had transformed Jess in ways she could never have imagined. The shy mechanic, who had discovered her father's journal, had evolved into a confident leader who had revolutionized military training doctrine. Her program had produced over 200 specialists who combined technical expertise with precision marksmanship, creating a new category of military professional. But the transformation had come with costs. The weight of command, the responsibility for lives saved and lost, the constant pressure of living up to a legend that had grown beyond the reality of one impossible shot. There had been nights when the burden felt overwhelming, when the faces of people she had trained haunted her dreams. "Do you ever regret it?" Tank asked, as if reading her thoughts. "The path we started that day in the hangar?" Jess considered the question, thinking about the young airmen she now trained, The missions her specialists had completed, the lives saved through precision, applied with mechanical exactness. No regrets about the mission, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just stayed a mechanic, kept Dad's journal to myself, lived a quieter life. You wouldn't have been happy, Tank said with certainty. Your father didn't teach you those skills so you could hide them. He taught you because he knew someday someone would need them. Major Sarah Mitchell, now Colonel Mitchell, commanding officer of base security at Peterson Air Force Base, appeared at the cemetery's entrance, her presence as commanding as ever. She had remained a close friend and mentor, someone who understood the unique pressures of carrying responsibility for others' lives. The delegation from Congress is arriving, she reported. Congressman Bradley specifically asked to speak with you before the ceremony. Jess rose, brushing grass from her uniform. Congressman Bradley, now serving his 4th term and chairing the House Armed Services Committee, had become a powerful advocate for military innovation and unconventional thinking. His near-death experience at Nellis had transformed him from a typical politician into someone who understood the human cost of national security. As they walked toward the ceremony site, Jess reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. The rebuilt M24 now resided in the Smithsonian, displayed alongside her father's journal and a detailed account of the longest shot in Air Force history. She had been featured on magazine covers, interviewed by news programs, and invited to speak at military academies around the world. But the moment she treasured most had come 3 years earlier, when a young specialist she had trained made an impossible shot of his own, saving a hostage situation in Syria. The student had exceeded the teacher, proving that precision could be taught, learned, and passed forward through generations of warriors. Major Thompson, Congressman Bradley greeted her warmly as they reached the ceremony site. I wanted to thank you again, not just for saving my life, but for what you've built since then. The specialists your program has trained have prevented 17 terrorist attacks and saved over 300 lives. They did the work, sir. I just helped them find the tools. Your father's tools, Bradley replied, passed down through love and dedication, multiplied through your vision and leadership. That's the kind of legacy that changes the world. As the ceremony began, Jess stood before the assembled crowd, military personnel, government officials, families of the specialists her program had trained. She thought about her father's words, written in a journal that had traveled from Afghanistan to Nevada, to this moment of recognition. Every bolt matters, every measurement, every calculation. Lives depend on getting it exactly right. My father believed that precision was the highest form of love, she said, her voice carrying across the gathered assembly. Not just mechanical precision, but the precision of purpose, of dedication, of service to something greater than ourselves. Today, we dedicate this facility not just to his memory, but to the idea that excellence can be taught, learned, and shared. As applause echoed across the ceremony grounds, Jess felt her father's presence in the morning air, in the faces of young airmen who would learn his techniques, in the knowledge that his legacy would continue protecting lives for generations to come. The longest shot had become a lasting mission, and the quiet mechanic who had discovered her father's journal had become the guardian of his vision, precision applied with love, service rendered with excellence, and the unshakable belief that impossible shots were simply opportunities waiting for the right person, with the right training, at exactly the right moment. 7 years later, the mission continued. As we reach the end of this extraordinary journey, we witness how one moment of impossible precision can ripple through time, transforming not just individual lives, but entire institutions. Major Jessica Thompson's story reminds us that heroism often emerges from the most unexpected places: a maintenance hangar, a forgotten journal, the quiet dedication of someone honoring their father's memory. The longest shot fired at Nellis Air Force Base was more than a display of marksmanship. It was a testament to the power of preparation meeting opportunity, of love channeled through discipline, and of legacy passed down through generations of service. Jess discovered that her father's greatest gift wasn't just the technical knowledge contained in his journal, but the understanding that precision, whether mechanical or human, is indeed the highest form of love. This story speaks to the warrior spirit that exists within ordinary people, waiting for the right moment to emerge. It celebrates the mentors like Tank who recognize potential and nurture it with patience and wisdom. It honors the leaders like Captain Mitchell who make difficult decisions under impossible circumstances. And it pays tribute to the countless service members who stand ready to sacrifice everything for the protection of others. But perhaps most importantly, this narrative reminds us that our greatest challenges often reveal our greatest strengths. When faced with an impossible situation, Jess didn't see limitations. She saw mathematics, physics, and the accumulated wisdom of 3 generations of military service. She transformed grief into purpose, uncertainty into precision, and fear into the courage necessary to save 42 lives with a single shot. The Precision Engagement Division that grew from that moment continues to train specialists who embody the marriage of technical excellence and warrior spirit. Each graduate carries forward not just advanced skills, but the understanding that their abilities exist to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Your thoughts matter to us. What resonated most with you in this story of precision, legacy, and impossible courage? Was it Jess's journey from mechanic to marksman, the power of mentorship and guidance, the way technical skills can become instruments of heroism? Share your experience. Comment below and tell us which moment in this story moved you most. If this tale of military precision and family legacy inspired you, write precision in the comments. It helps us know who stayed with this incredible journey to the very end and supports our mission to bring you more stories of American heroes. Discover more inspiring stories of courage, sacrifice, and the extraordinary people who serve our nation. Check out the recommended stories in the cards below, where you'll find more tales of military excellence, aviation heroics, and the unbreakable spirit that defines our armed forces. Remember, every bolt matters, every measurement counts, and sometimes the longest shots are exactly what the moment demands. In a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, there are still people who dedicate their lives to getting it exactly right, because lives depend on it. Thank you for joining us on this journey of precision, courage, and the enduring power of a father's love, expressed through the legacy he left behind. The longest shot was just the beginning of a story that continues every day in the service of those who stand watch over our freedom. Stay strong, stay precise, and never forget that heroes walk among us, often in the most unexpected places.